it's my fault, but in the end it's my fault because I probably did wrong, but you shouldn't be picking at me. Don't pick at anybody. Don't bother anybody. You get picking at somebody, you know what happens? You get picking at a dog, it'll bite you. Never been this many cars here before 9 o'clock. I'm having a big feeling that it's going to be a full house today. I like this little hot rod, eh? Tony Cadet? Yeah, cool. Looks good, man.
Not being happy with where my life is going, I decided to change it, and I took it and put it in my own hands. Had work clothes on, and I went to work and built some cars that no one's ever seen before.
Several people face impossible challenges daily, but only a few are as urgent as a young artist trying to pay for chemotherapy with nothing but her own drawings. When Maya set up a stall, hoping to sell her haunting artwork to cover treatment, what happens when Bad Chad, a man notorious for his exacting taste, stops to inspect her work? And what drives someone like him to turn a stranger's art into a life-changing opportunity?
Some people have opinions, some people have thoughts, and they say things, or somebody says something, and they really don't take the time and think. And that's why I always say it's easier to judge because you don't have to think.
Join us as we follow the girl selling artwork to fund her chemo till Bad Chad walks by and shocks everyone. Maya's last hope. A young girl sat quietly in her stall at the river market in Canning. 4 drawings hung behind her in the stall. They were technically flawless, as passing nods and murmured talent confirmed, and they were also, for the 5th Saturday in a row, unsold. One looked like ghostly mist. The other captured a frozen burst of celestial communication. One called Lattice depicted a woman holding a severed length of her own hair, the strands gathered in her hands like a relinquished offering. But the one that stood out the most was called Mitosis. It looked like a cell caught in the middle of a division. It wasn't perfect, and its lines broke into gashes. But to Maya, it was the only one that felt true to her, which was why she had priced it highest as a dare to herself and the world. Maya's body was constantly aching from the chemo and the weight of the sickness on her body. As she sat in her stall, all she could think of was the balance in her savings, $147. That was all she had left to cover the stream of debts that lay in her wake. Just that morning, a new notification had appeared on her phone, an explanation of benefits for her last infusion, listing a sum that made her scream in silence, especially knowing her lockbox held $40. A couple paused at the stall, comfortable and coordinated, the kind of people for whom art was an accent rather than a lifeline. And the woman drifted toward Lattice, studying it for a long moment before looking up at Maya. Her gaze lingered on Maya's bare scalp as she said that Maya looked beautiful, truly beautiful, even without her hair. The words landed awkwardly, leaving Maya unsure whether to accept or deflect them, and she thanked her anyway as the woman touched her own hair absently and explained that she had shaved it the previous year in solidarity with her sister during cancer treatment. Hope rose before Maya could stop it, and she asked how her sister was now, the question carrying more urgency than she intended, only for the woman's expression to soften and then fall as she said quietly that her sister hadn't made it. The air left Maya's lungs, and the practice mask slipped, while the man beside the woman looked down, suddenly absorbed in his wallet, and grief rested openly in the woman's eyes, no longer sharp, but worn smooth by time as Maya managed to say she was sorry, the words rough in her throat. The woman reached for Lattice and said it was beautiful, that her sister would have loved it, her voice catching on the last word, and the man paid without comment before they disappeared into the crowd. Maya stood still, and in that moment, she imagined her siblings referring to her in the past tense. She held the money tighter and decided she needed to move away from the market row where sympathy was an accepted currency. She wanted to survive, not be pitied. So the next morning, Maya had claimed a new spot on the prime western lane where customers emerged from sedans and not buses. It was directly opposite a large corrugated metal warehouse, and the scent here was different. Oil, ozone, the tang of hot metal. The growl of an angle grinder sporadically tore the air as men in shop coats walked in and out. It felt like the heart of something practical. She was meticulously aligning mitosis on her backdrop when the light changed. Someone had stopped in front of her stall, and people had begun to whisper. When Maya looked up, she recognized him from TV as Chad Hilts. Barely acknowledging her condition, he assessed her artworks with rapt attention. The first pieces received little more than a glance. They were neat, controlled, carefully finished, and he treated them accordingly, noting their polish and moving on, as if they had already told him everything they could. When he reached the last drawing, he slowed. He stepped closer. The air between them seemed to thin. He told her that the work was trying too hard to behave, that it had been trained into something safe, and that safety had cost it its potential. He spoke without cruelty, but without apology, as if honesty were a neutral tool. Then he looked at her directly and said that she was a butcher hiding in a bakery, concealing the only cut that mattered behind decoration. The insult was so unexpected that the ceramicist, 2 stalls down, dropped a mug into a box of packing peanuts, the sound absurdly loud in the silence. Heat flooded Maya's face, a mix of shame and a terrifying, exhilarating rage. He gave no space for her story, for her illness, for anything outside the work itself. Without hesitation, he retrieved a wallet and handed over 5 $100 bills, placing them in her cash box without comment. He instructed her to bring 10 more concepts, emphasizing that they should not resemble the polished pieces she had shown, but should be raw, unguarded, and truthful to her vision. Then Chad stepped back and left, leaving the money, the order for additional works, and his contact arrangement as the only sign of his presence. But while the market crowd disappeared, what storm awaited Maya at home? Her survival's price tag. Just 8 weeks ago, Maya's chemo protocol had stopped working. A new but much more brutal protocol was advised. But the actual dreadful diagnosis came in a PDF Maya received that read, "Managing financial toxicity during cancer treatment." It was the first time she'd heard the phrase financial toxicity. That night, she Googled it, and she found the study from the Journal of Clinical Oncology defined it as a multidimensional construct comprising both objective financial burden and subjective financial distress. It stated plainly that this toxicity was associated with worse quality of life and potentially decreased survival. Maya wasn't just sick. She was in a state of economic morbidity. Apart from all her outstanding debt, Maya's new protocol, escalated BCOP, involved drugs that lived in a coverage gray area, infusions at an out-of-network center that offered a trial she needed, and supportive therapies that an algorithm deemed elective. She had even tried appealing and had lost. At the bottom of the screen was the price tag for her survival: $101,850.22. She'd read a report from KFF Health News that over 100 million Americans carried health care debt. She was now a unit in that statistic. And against it, she had just her art. Her old work, whimsical streets, smiling faces, felt like a lie she no longer had the breath to tell. So she went to the National Institutes of Health website's library. She studied electron microscope scans the way a prisoner studies the walls of her cell. She zoomed in on the very architecture of her disease, the sinister flower-like Reed Sternberg cells that were her body's betrayers. Since she couldn't control them, she learned to draw them in an attempt to own them. This was the woman at the market, and when Chad had stopped and called her a butcher hiding in a bakery, Maya had felt stripped but human. Chad had looked beyond her pale skin and all, and critiqued her work. And the terrifying question it left hanging in the darkroom: what did a man who worked on that scale want to build with her? Hope for a broken body. The cab dropped Maya on the gravel shoulder of a rural service road in Canning, rather than in front of an office park. The warehouse from the market loomed larger up close, a long corrugated metal building that looked less like a business. The air didn't just smell of oil and metal. It tasted of it. Maya found the back door, took a breath that failed to steady her, and walked in. The noise hit like a wall. The welder's thump, the scream of an angle grinder biting steel, a classic rock radio straining to be heard. The space was huge and hazy with dust and argon. Skeletal car frames hung from chains. Tools lined the walls, in chaotic order. At the center, under the only clean pool of halogen light, stood Chad Hilts. He wasn't at a desk. He was bent over a steel work table, studying a blueprint, a grease-stained coffee mug beside him. He wore the same shop coat, now marked by a fresh burn. He didn't look up as she approached, only raised a finger to signal that she should wait. She stood, feeling the grinder's vibrations through the concrete. After a minute, he snapped the blueprint closed and looked at her. His pale eyes gave nothing away. He told her to show him. Maya unzipped her portfolio bag on a cleared corner of the table, but instead of new sheets, she laid out the same 3 drawings from the market. Chad's gaze shifted from the drawings to her face. His jaw tightened as he asked what it was. Maya said it was what she had, and she added that she couldn't produce 10 new concepts in her current state. He waited. She took another breath. This was the negotiation. She told him she was in chemotherapy treatment and that a new cycle would begin tomorrow. She gestured to the drawings, her hand trembling despite her effort to control it. She said the point was the deal. If he wanted the 10 panels, he would pay a substantial portion in advance, enough to secure the time, to clear the clinic's lien so she could get through the next rounds. Then she could work. Then she could build the panels. She braced for derision, for him to call her unprofessional, to dismiss her discipline, to revoke the retainer and send her out. Instead, Chad studied the drawings. His attention lingered on mitosis, on its chaotic lines. He didn't see sickness. He saw force. As an engineer, he understood the body as a machine. Maya's body was in breakdown and needed recovery. Silence stretched between them, measured in grinder cycles. He nodded once. He crossed to a gunmetal gray safe, bolted to the wall between shelves of cabinets, worked the combination, and removed a thick stack of cash bound with a rubber band. He returned to the table, set the stack down, and peeled off bills, counting in a flat monotone. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. He placed $5,000 in $100 bills beside the drawing of the dividing cell. He said the money bought the first panel, specifying mitosis as a finished, large-scale piece. She had 6 weeks, not a day more. If she delivered, they would discuss the remaining 9. If she failed, she would repay the money. Maya agreed, barely audible, and their meeting ended. But when the door shut behind her, Chad took out his phone and scrolled till he found the contact he wanted to call. It was Jake's house. What could Jake's house possibly have to do with Maya?
Okay? So don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, all that sort of stuff.
Okay, what am I gonna do? Start from the half, go
Start.
1, 2, 3, go over here, 1.
No, just go right straight up. Just go right straight up.
Bad Chad's genesis. Chad Hilts was born and raised in Kingsport, Nova Scotia, the son of Australian immigrants Doug and Patricia Hilts. His passion for cars was ignited early, watching old cars fill up at his father's White Rose gas station in the early 1970s. At 14, he was driving his mother's 1946 Dodge half-ton to school. At 16, he famously persuaded his father to sell a hockey card collection to help him buy a '34 Ford 3-window coupe. He taught himself to build and customize cars, starting in his garage, using whatever materials he could find. Old appliances, scrap metal, and household items weren't junk. They were components waiting for a purpose. Life intervened early. He became a father at 16, left school and worked a series of jobs at a grain mill, a chicken processing plant, to provide for his young family. He tinkered on cars in his spare time, a relentless pursuit of his craft. After a brief troubled stint in an auto body college course, he continued on his own path. He built a shop on oceanfront property in Kingsport, much to his neighbors' dismay, before finally settling in Canning, Nova Scotia, where he built his own shop and could work in peace. This is where Hilts Auto Company was born, though it was first known as Green Goblin Customs, named after one of his signature mind-bending builds. His reputation grew not through advertising, but through sheer jaw-dropping creativity. Fans and observers described him as a mad genius and a master builder who could create award-winning masterpieces from junkyard finds and found objects. He took the aerodynamic body of a 1934 DeSoto Airflow and reimagined it as an eye-catching delivery truck for a local farm market. He built a 1962 Chrysler known as the Green Goblin that drove backwards, had its engine in the back and its trunk in the middle. The leap to television was orchestrated by his fiancée, Jolene McIntyre. In 2016, she began posting videos of Chad working on a challenging build, her own Ralph Lauren Bugatti replica. The weekly updates caught the eye of Discovery Channel executives, and by 2019, Bad Chad Customs was on the air. The show showcased his unique talent for granting new life to old machines, from transforming a 1971 Ford Pinto into a Euro Roadster to building an Oldsmobile that became a dump truck. His success built more than cars. It built a community.
The reason I'm spraying at high pressure is because I don't want texture. I don't want texture in the paint.
He founded the annual Rockabilly Weekend Car Show, a major gathering where he would often build and raffle off a custom vehicle. This time around, Chad Hilts' shop had swallowed a 1970 Chevrolet Nova. It was not a cherry classic. It was a candidate stripped to its bare, rust-flecked shell. "We're not fixing it," he told his lead fabricator. "We're forging it. I want every scar to tell. This one's called the Fighter." Chad took the plasma cutter himself, its electric buzz rising to a piercing shriek. Instead of slicing out rot, he deliberately seared long, jagged, abstract scars into the cleanest parts of the metal. He had Leo weld in patches of dark, textured steel into the gashes, making the wounds a permanent, raised feature of the car's anatomy. Then it went to Simone, the airbrush artist. Simone worked for days, layering transparent washes of color over the gray. She created veined, organic webs that pulsed across the doors and fenders, the colors pooling in the steel scars, giving the illusion of something alive and straining under a taut gray skin. It was unsettling and beautiful, a body in a state of profound, powerful stress. For the interior, Chad rejected the rich leather everyone expected. He sourced a durable, charcoal gray technical fabric used in racing suits. The upholsterer stitched the seats with a single, continuous white thread that ran across the headrest, split violently into two diverging paths over the bolsters, and then converged again on the other side, a perfect tactile echo of the cell division in Maya's drawing. Could her fragile body survive the intensity required to match Chad's vision?
As we made a deal with TV, I built the cars, they made the show. And basically that's how it goes. But me and Jolene own the cars.
The Fighter. Meanwhile, 70 meters away, a parallel fabrication was underway. The $5,000 transferred Maya's apartment from a sick room into a factory for a single product. The money bought practical things. It paid for a grocery delivery subscription so she didn't have to stand in fluorescent-lit aisles. It covered cab fare to the hospital, sparing her the nauseating sway of the bus. It hired a high school student for 2 hours a week to take out the trash and do the laundry, tasks that had become monumental. The cash did not buy health or energy. It purchased the only thing that mattered now: focusable time. Her treatment cycle dictated the rhythm. The chemo infusion was a 3-day tsunami of sickness. The following week was a gray fog of fatigue, her body feeling like a waterlogged battery. Then, if she was lucky, came 7 days of fragile clarity, a narrow window where the noise in her cells subsided just enough for the noise in her mind to take over. She worked in those windows. She cleared her living room floor, taped down a massive sheet of heavy archival paper, and anchored it with weights stolen from the building's gym. The original mitosis drawing was pinned to the wall, a furious, letter-sized ghost. On her hands and knees, armed with sticks of vine and compressed charcoal, she began the translation from sketch to monument. She did not clean up the original chaos. She weaponized it. The frantic lines became bolder, deeper gashes in the paper. The sense of division grew more violent, more tectonic. She used her whole arm, her shoulder, putting the weight of her body into the marks. She wasn't illustrating a cell. She was building a country, and it was being torn in two by its own nature. Sweat dripped from her brow onto the paper, leaving blooms of gray that she worked into the composition. Empty cans of nutritional drink sat in rows along the wall. She worked until the fine tremors, the chemo's lingering signature, made her lines waver. Then she'd collapse on the couch and sleep in her clothes, dusted in charcoal like industrial ash. The finished panel, rolled into a heavy tube, was delivered to the warehouse by a courier Maya paid for with the last of Chad's advance. She did not go with it. The act of completing it had drained the last reserves from that particular well of energy. A new chemo cycle had begun, and she was in the thick gray fog of it, where time bled into itself, and the world was reduced to the distance between her couch and the bathroom. Across town, the delivery was received without ceremony. Chad sliced the plastic seal of the delivery, pulled a few feet of the drawing from the tube, and examined it under the shop lights. The scaled-up fury of it was even more potent at full size. He could see the price in every deliberate, heavy mark. He gave a single, slow nod to the empty shop, re-rolled it with care, and placed it in a custom-built crate for shipping to the foundry. The first part of their contract was fulfilled. His focus now belonged entirely to the fighter. The final week was a blur of detail, and finally the night of Jake's House annual leadership gala arrived. The car was trailered to a downtown hotel, where it sat under a spotlight in the middle of a ballroom, surrounded by men in tuxedos and women in gowns sipping champagne. It was an alien presence in a room of polished fiction. Chad attended, but not as a guest. He stood in the shadows near the back wall, wearing a clean but unremarkable shirt, arms crossed, watching as people approached, intrigued and slightly repelled by the car's brutal aesthetic. The auctioneer spoke about Jake's House, about their vital work supporting families living with autism. He remembered the last gala car, a '55 Chevy called Jake's Car, a slick candy apple tribute that had brought in over $80,000 for the autism charity programs. Chad had worked with a strange, focused joy on that one, muttering once that building for a cause beat building for a paycheck. That car had been about hope, a bright, shiny thing for a community. He mentioned the generosity of the local automotive community. Then he gestured to the fighter. "Now this is a different kind of beast," he boomed. "A one-of-a-kind creation, built specially for this night by a craftsman who believes in our cause. This is not just a car, it's a statement. Let's start the bidding at $25,000. In the shadows, Chad watched the numbers climb. 30, 40, 50. A bidding war erupted between a tech CEO and a real estate developer, each seeing in the car something different, a trophy of exclusivity, a conversation piece. The room's energy became electric, a competitive thrill divorced from the car's origin. At 100,000, the real estate developer nodded firmly. The gavel fell. The room applauded. Chad didn't. He turned and left, slipping out a service exit into the cool night air. His job there was done. But could this single creation actually erase the weight of Maya's debts? A final sigh of relief. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the notification appeared on Maya's phone. A banner slid across the top of her screen. Portal alert. Electronic deposit received from auction house. Fighter auction fund. She tapped it, her brain sluggish. She navigated past appointment reminders, past lab results, to the page she had visited 1,000 times with dread. Financial summary. Outstanding balances. The page loaded. It is usually populated slowly, a list of line items from various departments, oncology, radiology, pharmacy, each with an ominous amount due. This time, it loaded instantly. At the top of the page, in large, bold green letters, was a message she had never seen before. Account current. No balance due. Below it, the table where her debts had lived was empty. The phone slipped from her hand and thumped softly onto the blanket. She made a short, punched-out exhalation, as if the physical weight of the number had been sitting on her chest and had suddenly vanished. She looked around her quiet, dim apartment, at the charcoal dust still ground into the floorboards near the wall, at the empty nutritional drink cans. The silence was different. It was the silence after a deafening noise had stopped. She slowly bent and picked up her phone. She gave the auction house a call, and that's how she learns Chad had built a car mirroring her artwork to pay off her bill. He hadn't given her a donation. Instead, he had built a machine, a financial instrument, and he had aimed it with surgical precision at the single largest problem in her life. In the warehouse, Chad reviewed the final accounting from Jake's house. The auction gross, the fees, the net proceeds, the transfer to the directed fund, and the confirmation from the medical billing clearinghouse that the specified debts had been paid. He filed the digital paperwork in a folder marked Fighter Project. He then walked over to his workbench where a new frame was waiting. There was always more to build. What will Maya create next, now that Bad Chad has seen her true work? How far do the world's most influential creators go to spot raw talent and shape it to their vision? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.